Whispers in the Well has been released. We've had our first weekend of events, and sadly, there's not a whole lot of information to go off of, but there's better than nothing. So, we're going to be looking at 7 decks in this video today, and then have a few conversations at the end of some of the stars and some of the duds in week one. So, before we get too crazy, let's get right into those decks. Before we get into them, just wanted to give a quick shout out to my coaching here. If you're looking to get coaching, looking to learn, looking to get better, looking how to set goals, I promise you, I am one of the best that's going to help you hit those goals, get in stride, and get what you want out of the Whispers in the Well metagame. So book a coaching session with me today over on Metafy in the pinned comments below, and of course, always in the description. Amber Emerald. This was the 4th place finish at the Sharp Gaming event this past weekend in Fort Smith, Arkansas. It was also over on JDZ Quest for his Twitch. If you're looking to grab some gameplay, something to watch this week and just get an idea of what the metagame is shaping up to be, it was one of the few events that was streamed. So go check out JDZ over on Twitch. But here we are. It is the Amber Emerald Circle Dogs deck. Not really dogs anymore, just a tramp, because tramp is one of the best ways to put cards into the discard pile. If we're able to build up a board, and you can see here we have Huey and Pluto, we're looking to get a tramp out as early as possible, utilizing both of those cards to kind of just make him cost even less, spam the board, get very wide. This is also kind of looking as a way to blank the early spooky sites, because we have 2 Mowgli and then 4 Ursula. There's a world where I would kind of maybe want to see that flipped just to be a little bit more safe in the spooky site. In our early testing of this deck, spooky site currently is one of the biggest enemies of it, because if you can't find the cards you need early, then you're kind of in danger to them and that turn 4 spooky site. So you have to have as many answers to it as possible. I really am enjoying this new cat, the Raja, which is the 3-cost 3/4 with 1 lure and bodyguard. This is a great way to protect your early singers, or in this version of the deck, protecting your Pluto, protecting your Huey. You can actually put this card into play on turn 2 by exerting the Pluto and playing it in bodyguard mode. And all of a sudden on turn 2, you have a 3/4 bodyguard that's protecting your Pluto, which enables you to kind of do really unfair things, because getting rid of a 3/4 on turn 2 is not the easiest thing to do in the metagame currently. Not a whole lot of mana mims running around right now. Not a whole lot of 4 strength characters on turn 1 that can answer it. So you might be able to get more uses out of your Pluto because of this 3/4 bodyguard. The end all be all of this list is, of course, the Circle of Life. We're looking to discard cards early with the Bobbies and Maruski, or, of course, the Tramp. Either one of those cards, getting cards in your discard pile, and then being able to sing Circle of Life, getting the big characters in play like Stitch, Carefree Surfer, or of course Prince Philip. And we have the one, the only Malicious, Mean, and Scary, which is the newest Emerald card, 3-cost inkable song that when you sing it or when you play it, you get to put 1 damage on each opposing characters, which then is the #1 combo for the Prince Philip, because then it allows you to banish all characters in play that are damaged. Another little shining star here is the Mickey Mouse, the Amber character, that effectively gives your characters, your Amber characters, +2 willpower. So it's kind of like a Rapunzel's tower on a character, which is quite interesting. And then it also enables you to have a Singer 8 when you have multiple Amber characters in play. What this enables is that 1 character that costs 4 is able to sing Under the Sea or Circle of Life. Either of those things are quite powerful and definitely something you want to be looking at. So, all in all, really interesting to see this kind of come out of the gate in a different manner. I've seen versions of it like this. I've seen versions with singers. I've still seen dogs versions. So, Circle of Life definitely seems to be a card that's getting some love early, and kind of a card from Fable that people have really been wanting to jump at. So, really interesting deck early on. Congratulations for the top 4 finish. Emerald Sapphire is here to stay, and it probably got a lot better. This is the version here that's featuring spooky sites and Malicious, Mean, and Scaries. Kind of a wombo combo of saying like, hey, I'm going to be able to remove the aggro decks. I'm going to be able to remove the more mid-range decks because I just have all the answers. What's really common that we're starting to see now is the 4/4 suite of Prince Philip and Malicious, Mean, and Scary. This is a combo that people were saying like, oh, maybe I can play 2 of, maybe I can play 3 of. I don't need to really do it. I have visions. I can play Develop Your Brain. I'm going to draw a bunch of cards with Clarabelle. But it's very clear that in games where you play the Malicious, Mean, and Scary and the Prince Philip, you just get so far ahead and your opponent has a really tough time recovering, and therefore maxing out on those cards, again, because they're inkable. The fact that these cards are inkable makes it so much easier and accessible to play as many copies as you want because you're not worried about getting stuck with an unink in your hand. Another interesting card here is the Max Goof, which is the 6 cost inkable, 4 strength, 5 willpower, 2 lore. He does have shift, but there is no shift target here. And he has the ability that when he quests, you can play a song from your discard pile that costs 4 or less, and then put it on the bottom of your deck. Very similar to the Ursula Deceiver in set 3. So Max Goof is offering you another way to get back your Malicious Mean and Scaries, or your Mother's Knows Best, or even, of course, your Welcomes. So this deck also is representing a 1 jump ahead, which is fine because it can be sung again because of the Max Goof. But all in all, really, I think that you're looking at a list here that has 4 Sail, 4 Tipo, 1 jump ahead, and then, of course, the 4 wonderful Cinderellas and 3 Donald Duck Flatfooteds. Lots of ramp here to get out to the beastly things. This is also noticing here that there are no 3-cost Prince Phillips in this deck because we're not even looking to shift. We're just going to inadvertently get to 9 ink pretty easily. Basically, every Sapphire deck in the format currently is just looking to go ramp on 2, Cinderella on 3, and then maybe Spooky Sight, maybe John Silver, maybe some other 6-cost bomb. They're just looking to establish the board and threaten the game because basically from turn 5 on, they can now play Hades. They can now play Basil. They can, they're just going to keep going up the totem pole of characters that they can play that are like really offensive to the board. And that's kind of the scheme for all these Sapphire decks. Cinderella is the absolute key to all of them. It's definitely a card that early on I would just purchase them because I think they're that good, and there's a chance that they just keep going up in price. Definitely the enchantments. The more of these decks are successful and showing success, if you're an enchanted gamer, then I think the card's just going to go skyrocket. I'll be honest, full disclosure, we sold one for $500 this weekend. So yeah, go buy them before you have to spend $500 on them. This is also a big, big win here. This is the first place winner at CardCon, the CCQ, which was 226 players. So a huge shout out to the Promised Land because they just gained themselves an EU CC invite. So huge, big congrats there. It's awesome. Picking up another CCQ win. Emerald Sapphire, this is a deck of the last format that did not have a whole lot of victories. It had some success. It showed its, way in the EU DLC, right, in Bologna. I think there was 8 of these in the top 32, and then they kind of got washed away before the top 8. So this is a deck that has seen success in EU, but it never in like a winning, real like big tournament success. So going out and winning a week 1 226 player tournament for the Baja Blast, I think that's pretty good. I think that's really important for people to note that this deck it might now have the tools. Malicious Mean and Scary and Spooky Sight, and of course Cinderella might be the tools that we're just missing. And right now, those cards seem to be dominant in the metagame. So if you're an Emerald Sapphire player, this is great. If you don't like this deck, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to probably start seeing a lot more of it. So again, congratulations to Promised Land on picking up that invite. Shout out to our good friend Mo Shamblin, picking up a top 8 at the Sharp Gaming 54-player tournament this weekend with, yeah, you guessed it. I'm sure if you know Mo, if you've been following him forever, you know that he's bringing Emerald Amethyst. This is his bread and butter, and he's bringing it in a really cool and unique way. Here again, the biggest thing you're seeing on early here is the Emerald decks being a force in the metagame because of Malicious, Mean, and Scary and Prince Philip. That combo is just deadly, and it's really just kind of the focus point of the metagame so far early on. However, Mo does have a couple interesting new cards here that we definitely want to touch on. The first being Iago. Iago is the 2-cost inkable, 0 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore with Challenger 5. That's right, you heard me. Challenger 5. So this 2-cost has the ability to kind of take out the majority of the metagame when left uncontested. Thought that was a really interesting choice. We also have some boost characters in here, which is nice to see early on in the metagame. Seeing the Flynn Rider and the Cheshire Cat, each utilizing that boost mechanic for different reasons. Flynn Rider becoming a little bit more of a threat to the metagame, gaining some lore, in a way becoming like a pseudo Bonsai that's inkable, not the same, but kind of. Then the Cheshire Cat is, of course, the ability to move around damage. This deck is looking to do that a bunch. We have, the 1/3 Ursula. We have Ursula, which is a 3/4. We have the big butt of Clarabelle's and the big butt of Prince Philip's, and then of course Madam Mim Elephant and Genie. So a lot of willpower going around to be utilized with Cheshire Cat, and that's really nice. So due to all that willpower, the Cheshire Cat really does start to shine in this particular metagame, which is really nice. We also have 4 of the Hades. Now, this card seems to be one of the breakout cards of the weekend for a lot of different reasons. It's seen play in Emerald Amethyst, Sapphire Amethyst, Amethyst Steel, like Hades looking for a deal, the 5-cost inkable, 3 strength, 4 willpower, 1 lore, with the ability, what you say, when you play this character, you may choose an opponent character. If you do, draw 2 cards, unless that character's player puts the card on the bottom of their deck. So either we are removing the card that we want to get rid of, or your opponent is going to allow you to draw 2 cards, which on average you're going to find other answers here. As an example, for this deck, you can just play a Genie on 4, and then you can play Hades on 5. They're going to choose the target that you want. They're going to say, oh no, I want this character, I'm going to keep it in play. And then you get to draw 2 cards. And then like your Genie can just sing Mother's Knows Best and just like get rid of it. It can sing You're Welcome and then get rid of it. They can draw 2 cards also, but at least you got to draw 2 cards. I just think it's doing a whole lot of like really interesting things to the game, and I think it's definitely a standout. The fact that this card's iconic is very interesting because it's probably the most playable iconic so far, which should make that price of that card go up a little bit. So if you're, a max rarity gamer, again, I would definitely get after that card. We also see the Webby Duck pop up. This is a card that we talked about a little bit last week in our video, but now we have it here, which is the Junior Prospector. That's 4-cost inkable, 2 strength, 4 willpower, 2 lore, with Shift 2 and Ward, and the ability Work Smarter. Whenever this character requests, if an opponent has more cards in their inkwell than you may put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exert it. This is kind of enabling you to keep up with Sapphire decks. If every Sapphire deck is looking to ramp on 2 and ramp on 4 and ramp on 3, that means it's potential that your Webby will also gain you 2 ink as well in the process. And in games that you do that, you kind of now get to go par for par with them and have answers for all their things. I will note that this deck has 4 of the Prince Philip's, the 3-cost inkable 3/2 with 2 lore and ward, because that is the way that this deck is going to end up comboing. Getting the 9 ink, I'm not saying it's impossible, but getting the 6 ink is way more likely with the Amethyst draw in this deck. So that's what I'm looking for here, is that if Webby is going to enable us to get to 6 ink so much easier in Sapphire matchups, and you get to do the Wombo combos as well, then all of a sudden your deck looks a little bit more interesting. The other thing that's notable about Webby and Prince Philip here are the ward. So, your opponent's going to have a difficult time getting rid of this warded character. It's really difficult for, the steel removal to get there, but of course they have the characters that can kind of back that up. But Sapphire decks are not going to have a lot of easy times getting rid of this 2 lore character, and it's very possible that Webby ends up gaining you 4 to 6 lore in the Sapphire matchups because it can't be spooky sighted. They can't else it when they come. They can't bell it. They can't Cheshire Cat. They have to really get to a board that they can get 4 willpower out. And you have a lot of ways to kind of like prevent them from doing that. One last shout out to here, which is the Go-Go Tamago. I know this is a card that Mo loves, so it's not shocking to me to find that card in here. Again, big body willpower characters laying around right now. I can definitely envision Go-Go picking up 4 or 5 lore in some cases. In some of these matchups that's 25% of your lore total. Makes it a lot easier to win games if you're able to get a big Go-Go. So again, huge shout out to Mo. And again, I can't really talk about this anymore, but Sharp Gaming, these are guys that are really trying to make this tournament scene in Fort Smith, Arkansas a thing. They're hosting these big, large events, big payouts. This was a 10K and only had 54 players. And they also had a 3K, which was Infinity, which was a lot less players, I think. So, when you have these tournament organizers out there really putting it out in a show, trying to get people to come play Disney Lorcana, man, we got to make an effort to try and get there. I was there a few months ago, couldn't make this one. Timing was a little bit bad, but in all, if you're in that area, if you can drive to this tournament, these are tournaments that are worth going and supporting. Again, if you want to watch this, go check out JDZ Quest on Twitch. He has 2 days of gameplay from this weekend. So lots to learn, lots of love. And hey, if you're looking for Whispers of Well content, you should probably check it out and get the game so you understand what these new cards are doing. Quick reminder here, we have the Amber Emerald Dogs breakdown. Melissa started that guide with a Whispers in the Well introduction. In week 1, there wasn't a lot of success from dogs. In bigger tournaments, it's not really around, but it's kind of developing. How are we going to answer the spooky site, which is clearly a bit of a problematic card. My opinion, we're probably going for Mowgli, for Ursula, and that's the life that we're going to have to live. But there's a lot of new, unique cards that are kind of coming in the metagame that can create these really interesting moments like that Raja Cat. So definitely stay on the lookout. If you're an Emerald Dogs fan, don't give up just yet. We're not giving up on yet. There's still think there's a chance for this in the metagame. Sapphire Steel picks up the first place finish at the Sharp Gaming event this past weekend. 54 players, of course, and it is a little bit of an interesting one. In this version, we're seeing a lot of these decks, and I think the Sapphire Steel community is probably saying, like, okay, this deck list is 45 cards locked. But after that, there is some question marks of like, hey, how do I round out those last 15 cards? In this version, we're seeing an Ink Runner. I think Ink Runner is the first shout out here because if you really look across the board in this list, this deck does have 3 Jasmine. So that does interact with evasive characters, but you have to discard a card, so it makes it a little bit more problematic. There's not a lot of evasive answers, so a Genie, as an example, could be kind of a problematic card in the metagame for you because you just don't have an answer to it. But Ink Runner all of a sudden makes our Tinkerbell the ability to challenge a Genie, and that might be enough of a way by itself to just flip all Amethyst matchups or make Amethyst even more favorable to you. But all in all, this is the epitome of Cinderella deck. I think that a lot of these decks in the previous metagame were always kind of wanting to go ramp, but it was so difficult to do that because playing a card like Pleakley means we aren't to the board. It means that we only have a 3/4 that can't sing exactly everything that we wanted or play more powerful cards. It also meant that the lines had to go a certain way for us to get into it. Having a turn 2 ramp into a turn 3 Cindy into a turn 4 spooky site removes a lot of the problems in the game. And when your second worst play is just put a Tinkerbell into play, which does 1 damage across the board, it's also a pretty great feeling because all of a sudden now Tinkerbell plus Cinderella on the very next turn can start singing songs. Cinderella herself can sing He Hurled Thunderbolts. So this deck right now, I think, has gotten the most tools to go from a semi-successful deck with really good pilots to this deck might be a threat to the metagame, period. And it might even be like one of the best decks in the metagame. So this really did get a lot of tools from Whispers. I've said this in the past when I've talked about decks like this, where basically the community decides, oh, we want to build a deck for this ink type. And then a card comes out, and to me, it's like, oh, this is the card that we have always needed, and it's actually the reason to build a deck around or in that ink combination because this card now exists. I think that is just Cinderella. I think Cinderella is exactly what Sapphire Steel has needed for quite some time, pretty much since the removal of Hiram, if I'm being full honesty here. So right now, Cinderella is just that centerpiece. It is, without a doubt, the Dumbo of this set, where it just felt like Dumbo was the reason why all Amethyst decks were successful in the previous set. Now we have Cinderella, which are going to probably make all Sapphire decks successful. It's going to be really difficult to play Sapphire, I think, without Cinderella. In my humble opinion, early on in the metagame, it is worse finding Cinderella than it was Dumbo, because I think Dumbo, you couldn't make an excuse for and play enough answers to, compete against it early on. I think Cinderella is the absolute best thing you could be doing on turn 3 in Disney Lorcana right now, and it's not close. So definitely, again, I can't stress this enough. Go buy your Cinderellas. Amber Steel. All right, we went a little bit for a reach on this one, but hey, we want to shout out stores that are trying to get events going off week 1. So we're going to give a shout out to Top Choice Gaming. This was a 36-player event. We don't even have all the deck lists from it. But hey, we do have the second place finish, and Amber Steel believers, don't give up just yet. We have a chance. So this is a really cool, different list. We've seen versions of Amber Steel be successful early on in a lot of different fashions, but this is pretty much a very team bodyguard oriented. We also did get a new princess in the form of Rapunzel. Rapunzel Ready for Adventure is a 2-cost inkable, 1 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore with support, and the ability Act of Kindness. Whenever one of your characters is chosen for support until the start of your next turn, the next time they would be dealt damage, they take no damage instead. And of course, we also have the Alwani, which is the 1-cost, 2 strength, 1 willpower, 1 lore with support, and she's also a princess. So now Aurora has picked up a couple new tools to utilize her ability Royal Welcome. Whenever this character requests, you pay 1 less for the next princess or queen character you play this turn. So now we have a lot of different ways to really flood the board early, and because we have these abilities to flood the board early, Bodyguard becomes a little bit more prevalent, and that's why you're seeing in here the Sleepy, which is the 2-cost inkable, 0 strength, 4 willpower, 1 lore Bodyguard, which is also a knight that's notable right now. And then, of course, the Raja that I mentioned earlier, the 3-cost inkable, Devoted Protector, 3 strength, 4 willpower, 1 lore, and Bodyguard. These cards are kind of looking a little bit better because now this deck is really looking to play a very offensive, defensive game, to where we have 2 characters with support that when they support a character, that character can no longer take damage the next time. So we're really looking to kind of get under our opponents here. This deck is not a Tiana deck, so we're not even looking to do Tiana here. We're looking to just go Aurora 1, and then on turn 2, it might be Mulan, Alwani, Daisy Duck. And then on turn 3, we might just play Rapunzel. So now when we quest with Alwani, we can protect our Daisy Duck and say, yeah, man, our Daisy Duck's not going anywhere anytime soon. We have the backup from Mowgli. Mowgli gets to, get rid of those spooky sites, get rid of those problems. We still have the lore package of Nala. Obviously we have Lady and of course Docs. But this deck is just looking to turn sideways and say, hey, figure it out. And it does have a unique addition, which is Seven Dwarfs Mine. This is a card that we've seen our TFM member Chaotic be very successful with in the past, top 6 seeding DLC Seattle with. And Seven Dwarfs Mine, because you have Doc and you have Sleepy, is a 2-cost inkable, 2 to move to, 6 willpower, 1 lore with the ability Mountain Defense. During your turn, for the first time you move a character here, you may deal 1 damage to chosen character. If the move character is a knight, deal 2 damage instead. So it's a card we haven't seen in a while, but it's still nice. This is also a great card to play into spooky site turns. I think locations are sort of making a comeback a little bit. I know that I played them this weekend. It felt really, really good when my opponent, I knew they were going to spooky site. I'm like, okay, here's a legend, here's a location to deal with. So this is kind of the same strategy here of like, we're going to play low to the ground. We're going to play a lot of cards that are interesting and interact with one other very synergistically. This Rapunzel, this Alwani, getting support, really protecting our characters on another level. If we get to support a bodyguard and now the bodyguard can't take damage and it protects us, they have to do a lot of things to get through these bodyguards. And I think because of that, this synergy is really, really interesting. It's definitely something that Amber Steel players should lock onto early. Huge shout out to Patrick again for a nice second place finish in week 1. The second place deck in CCQ, the Card Con 226 players, was Zaro, featuring a Sapphire Amethyst deck all the way, making the deep run in this event. And hey, there's no Cinderellas. And I do wonder if this is a Kendall moment from the first weekend of Fable where they couldn't find Dumbos, because I'm going to be honest, Cinderella's really good, and I think it would make this deck better. But hey, if they couldn't find them, this is one of those things that you look at and say, well, 226 players didn't even have potentially the best card from Whispers in the Well and was still able to finish in second place. That probably tells me one thing. A, Zaro's a great player. B, Sapphire Amethyst isn't going anywhere. I think if this deck was able to come out and compete in week 1 without potentially its best card being added to it, that might be telling you all you need to know. And this is definitely a deck that's going to be a threat moving forward. What I also want to point out here is this deck is just, if I had to build a Frank Karsten version of Sapphire Amethyst, it probably looked like this one. 1 Rafiki, 1 Hades, 1 Ursula, 1 Big Elsa, 1 Everybody's Got a Weakness. You got to love to see all these things. 1 Dumbo, might I add. It's featuring a lot of really cool and interesting new cards. The other thing I think is a big notable here, big beefy Demona. Demona, Betrayer of the Clan, is a 4-cost inkable, 4 strength, 6 willpower, 1 lore, plus Challenger +2, and of course the Stone by Day. If you have 3 or more cards in your hand, this character can't ready. What I will say about this particular list is that turn 3 Demona probably in most cases ends in her not readying. So you will get to banish a card, and then she might sit there for a few turns because just the way your deck works. But as the game goes later, I think the card gains a lot of like potential because in a lot of these like standstill matchups where you're just looking to deal damage and kind of remove cards from play, well, this 4 calls to Mona answers opposing Hades. Like it has 6 strength when it challenges, and it has 4 on the kickback. So even in a world where your opponent's like, oh, I'm not going to turn my Hades sideways because it just gets banished by Demona, you can still quest. So I think that that's really cool, really interesting, and I don't know, it's different. I also want to shout out the Ursula. This is another boost mechanic card that we're seeing. It's one that we talked about quite a bit, and now we're seeing it, really come to fruition here in a second place finish at a CCQ. So the 5 cost inkable, 4 strength, 5 willpower, 2 lore, Ursula Whisper of Vanessa is a boost 1 and then slippery spell. While there's a card under this character, she gets +1 lore and gains evasive. So this is a real good threat to kind of winning the game. Having a 4/5 evasive character with 3 lore is just a nice clock to the game because it's really saying like, hey, if you don't answer this, I'm going to just walk away with this one. I'm going to gain a bunch of lore. You're not going to have any answers to it. I also want to give a huge shout out to Everybody's Got a Weakness. This is a card that I've always loved, and we've looked, to play it as often as possible in some of the Sapphire Amethyst decks because of how high your willpower is. So finding the 4 cost inkable, this is a Amethyst action that says remove 1 damage from all of your characters onto 1 opposing characters, and then draw a card for each damage move this way. So the idea that you can have so many of these characters with high willpower just end up taking them all the damage off, moving it onto something, probably banishing it, and then drawing cards per damage moved. That's a really, really threatening card. It's a great one-of because your opponent is never really expecting it. It's inkable, so when it's bad, it's bad. But when it's good, it's probably uncontested good. Like, it'll absolutely flip a game upside down. The notable here is, of course, the Junior Woodchuck's Guidebook. Still playing. This is a new addition to the draw mechanics for Amethyst. It's a 2 cost inkable with the ability of, paying 1 to banish it and then drawing 2 cards. It is basically the friends on the other side at home currently because we no longer have that wonderful song, but we do have the item. I think it's also notable here to kind of just take away from what this deck is really looking at. Again, there are no Cinderellas in this list. We still have the second stars to the right, which I think is, it's still a very good card, but with cards like Mowgli around, it makes me a little bit worried because that card just like sits in your hand forever. You can't get rid of it. So Mowgli is just automatically always going to get it, even very late in the game sometimes, because it's so hard to get rid of, specifically without Cinderella. Also, if we had Cinderella and we could just get it online and be like, you know what, this card might be a problem in my hand, let me just get rid of it, move the game forward. I think that's another interesting note, but hey, it's just not what we have. But it is really just understanding like this deck kind of taking everything. It's playing Junior Woodchuck Guide, and people like, oh, this will bring back Happy as a Clam. I tested Sapphire Amethyst with the Happy as a Clam. Not for me. I don't think it's actually that good. I think paying 6 for Happy as a Clam to only get back this doesn't feel great. It's not Popsicle. You're not putting Lucky Diamond to play for free. Like, you're not doing a lot of like really powerful things that Happy as a Clam also did. And the key thing here is like, it's not Popsicle. There's no Popsicle in the format that's just free to banish, so you can always get it back. And it's kind of just like moves everything flow. Paying 2 and then an additional 1 to banish a card is way more difficult than just paying 1 to draw a card and then banish it to get it back later. So just kind of being weary in your early deck building. It's some of the things that we're definitely seeing in our testing. And this kind of proved my point of maybe we don't need Happy as a Clam. Maybe that was a bit of an overreaction. All in all, second place finish in the CCQ here. You have to kind of love that. Again, no Cinderellas. Very, very impressive. Almost got that invite just right there. So, hey, shout out to Zaro here on a great finish. And of course, where would it be without Frank Karsten week 1? The DLC winning Milwaukee wasn't good enough for him. He comes out, finds some time to go to the 226 player CCQ at CarCon, and finishes in top 4. That's an impressive run for Frank here. Amethyst Steel again, really showcasing the deck building and really making some very interesting choices here, going to some of the cards that did help him win the DLC, upping that Timothy Mouse count to 3. I believe Frank had mentioned that, he felt the field was going to be Sapphire-ish, and he wanted cards that were very good in the Sapphire matchup, and therefore seeing a Timothy Mouse in 3 of makes a lot of sense because, when you have cards like Palace Guard into Timothy Mouse into Tinkerbell Fast Flyer, which is now a 4 of, it was a 2 of, you're just seeing this evolution and kind of the positioning of this deck. It's the most common thing that I say about this deck. I say it all the time. Amethyst Steel is as good as its position in the metagame, and it has so many tools that you get to choose what that position is. Frank went into this event and said, you know what? I'm not worried about Amber Steel. I'm not going to worry about Sapphire Steel just yet. Like, I'm going to worry about the Sapphire metagame, the Emerald Sapphires of the world, the Amethyst Sapphires of the world, and I'm going to build my deck that's very content and cleans lore quickly and has ways to finish out the game later. That's what Frank's plan was here. That was his position on the deck, and I think it paid off. Obviously, we didn't win the tournament, but it's really hard to be that upset when you get a top 4 in this large of a tournament, and with this deck in particular. So Frank finding out a nice way to get in there. Some of the key changes that I just mentioned, up on Timothy Mouse's, up on Tinkerbell's, down on White Roses, but still there. We do have the Cheshire Cat that's also a little bit running around in this deck still. Big note here is that we are not off Dumbo. 4 Dumbos. We're playing a deck here that also has 1 of the Genie Dragon and then 3 Lexington. I think that's just playing the numbers, and Frank's just saying, like, hey, how many evasive characters do I need that say evasive on them for my Timothy Mouse, 1, and for my Dumbo, 2. So that's just kind of deck building 101 here, of just Frank kind of getting in his own brain of saying, these are the cards that I need to make sure that all my cards do what they're supposed to do. So huge shout out to there again for Frank. He's just one of the best deck builders in kind of the history of trading card games, let alone for sure one of the best deck builders in Disney Lorcana ever. And you're just seeing it very early on here. Notable, only 3 Doc Bold Knights. Went down on Doc, which is an interesting fact, but hey, that's what we're doing right now. We're also bringing in Hades, because now we have a 5-cost Hades that might basically just be Doc. We also have Demona that is, Doc plus, because it gets to exert the board. We get to draw 3 cards potentially and just keep moving the game forward. Really a very interesting take on Amethyst Steel, and just understanding his position in the metagame as perfect as possible. Next up for the Metafy this week, this is the definite guide getting updated. Amethyst Steel is a deck that we care very much about. We've been taking our time. We've actually built a couple different versions of them and been testing them. I'm going to be reviewing some of the new cards in Amethyst Steel coming up, and we're going to be talking about some of the decks that we have been starting with early on this past weekend. I played an Amethyst Steel Burn deck. The coolest thing to note about it, it was a $47 deck. And we think that it has a pretty good chance early on in the metagame to be successful. So if you're looking for more from us for Amethyst Steel, you can always go to the Metafy and pick up this rotation guide. So the question is, I just covered a bunch of decks, and there's lots of tournaments over on Ink Decks, and you can go search this, look at them for yourself. Remember, all the deck lists are always in the description below. It's just, our link to our Dreamborn that has all of this stuff. So if you're ever looking for any of those deck lists, it's very easy to find. It's in the pinned comment below. But the one thing that's, it's a little bit worrisome, guys. Where's Ruby? Because I've been hearing for weeks that these cards are going to save Ruby. And maybe not Sleepy Hollow, but, maybe there's some cool things you can do with that. Although it's a little broken, apparently, if you're not paying attention to the rules chat. Nonetheless, Ruby got some tools, but it doesn't look like that has kind of come out week 1. So I guess my question is to you, does Ruby have a chance? Is it there? Did it gain the tools in Whispers that everyone thought it did? Or in your early testing, are you finding some problems? I can say for me, in our early testing, drawing cards was not easy. And therefore, it was problematic to maintain consistency, which is very similar to Fabled. So right now, we're trying to find that base of hey, what is really necessary to be successful in this metagame? And it's really difficult to compete with the consistency of other decks as Ruby right now. And even necessarily these tools that we're gaining, they're not impacting the game as we thought they would. So we'll see. It's only week 1. If you're a Ruby believer, let me know in the comment below. Let me know what I'm missing. Let me know what the world is missing. Because again, week 1, we've had a couple different tournaments, and there was still, it's like Fable all over again. There's not a Ruby card in sight. I will say the shining cards of this weekend for me are these 6 cards here. I've watched a lot of games. I played a lot of games. I've talked to a lot of players, and these are the cards that definitely stood out the most. So, if you don't see them here, we got Hades, Malicious, Mean, and Scary, Spooky Sight, Demona, Goliath, and Cinderella. That's right. Cinderella is, without a doubt, the top echelon of cards and Whispers in the Well right now. I don't think there's a card that's even remotely close to the power level of it. I've heard words of it being overrate it. That's absolute insanity. The card is outstanding. It might even be underrated, if I'm being completely honest with you. Malicious, Mean, and Scary, adding this Emerald board wipe to the game is definitely something that we're seeing all sorts of different players trying to figure out the best way to do that. Hades just seems like the best 5-cost card ever. People are like, oh, you don't get what you want. And the problem that I've had that for me moving forward with that comment and playing that card a ton over the last week is that even if on my turn 5, if I quote, don't get what I want, the downside is I still get something that's impactful to the game. The idea that I can just play a Hades and then my opponent has to choose like, oh, do I remove this character that he wants me to remove, or do I let him draw 2 cards? Either option is good. If it's a 5-cost banished character, then this is Dragonfire that's inkable. Okay, that's insane. If it's a 5-cost 3/4 for 1 lore that draws 2 cards, it's basically like a finder's keeper, but you get stats. And those stats can sing and challenge and gain lore. This card is just like the most universal card in the game right now, I think. It kind of just does everything that you want, even though there's a mode on it. So another really, really powerful card. Spooky Sight is kind of just meta defining in itself. The fact that Spooky Sight exists creates these decision points in games, creates these decision points in deck building of like, how am I going to combat with the Spooky Sight? So that's just doing everything. And then Goliath really being a standalone card in the steel decks just seems so very powerful. And Demota, what she represents is very similar to Spooky Sight. When you set up certain boards and everyone's in a standstill, Demota comes in and just ruins the entire game for everybody, draws you cards back up and just says, yeah, man, I'm going to win this whole war. You're going to be left with nothing. I'm probably going to have stats still in play, a bunch of lore in play. You're going to start your turn with 4 cards, which is fine because now you're going to have maybe 5 or 6 ink to kind of just deal with everything that I still have. And it's just like not even close. It's such a powerful card. So all in all, these are my shining cards for the week in week 1. I'd love to know from you, what are your shining cards? Hit me up in the comments below. Let me know all those things. Quick reminder that this weekend we will have a $3,000 release event. It is guaranteed prizing, 128 player cap, Swiss, cut to top 8, $50 buy-in. Also on Friday night, we're going to have a release sealed event. So if you guys want to come and hang out Friday night, you can pick up your singles. Singles will be on site on Friday. There's also a form that if you're looking to buy cards from us, if you're specifically looking to get cards for the Forbidden Mountain, I'm going to put in the description below. There's a pre-sale form. If you want to fill it out, we will fill your order for you, send you an email, let you know like, hey, this is the price of it. You can agree to that, and then we'll get that order to you. If you're coming to the event, you can pick it up Friday or Saturday. If you're not coming to the event, we're going to be a little bit delayed because we're looking to first, without a shadow of a doubt, fill our orders for the players coming to the tournament because that's the most important thing for us. We're hosting this tournament to give people in the Philadelphia community a bigger event to play in, a grander scale to play on, get used to those DLCs, get used to those CCQs, trying to get everything they want out of it so they can come and compete and be ready for the next level. That's the hope for this. It's the whole reason we're doing this. So hopefully, if you're in the area, you want to come hang out with TFM, we're going to have Melissa there. We're going to have Orion there, Scott, Kylie, and myself on site. Great players from the local community coming up. Royce from Delaware. We got Judge Vince, who judged the last one that's coming up. We got Braden Bodish coming out. So a lot of really great names in the Northeast region for us. Looking forward to it. Can't wait. I guess final comments here. Let me know. Are we okay with the metagame so far? It's only week 1. So much to be learned, but I think it was a really cool, interesting weekend. Emerald seems to be doing great. Sapphire seems to be doing great. Amethyst still seems to be doing great. Where does everything else fall? I think we're going to need a few more weeks to figure that out. But thank you guys so much for watching today, and we will catch you in the next one.